Hi, ready? Welcome to lesson 21, session 2. Today we're going to be understanding multiplication as scaling. So yesterday we talked a little bit about what scaling was. We talked about it either stretching a quantity or shrinking a quantity based off of the factors that you're multiplying. We also talked about what happens when you multiply by a factor less than 1, a factor equal to 1, and a factor greater than 1, and how the product is related to that factor that you're multiplying by. And so we're going to go ahead and do a little bit more work with that today. We'll be working in your Ready Classroom Math workbook on pages 429 through 432. So go ahead and take out your Ready Classroom Math workbook to page 429. All right, so on page 429, we see a series of number lines, and I know how much you love number lines. And so we're going to look at how a quantity changes based off of the factors that we're multiplying by. So we're going to look here at number 1, and it says this. The first number line shows 3/4. So if you look at that top number line, we can see that we have the value of 0 to 2 on the number line. We have 1 at the midway point or the halfway point, and then we have the whole separated into fourths, and that this is showing 3/4. And so we already have the 3/4. Okay, now we're going to multiply and we're going to find out what is 1/3 of 3/4, and we're going to put that on this line here. So if we see that 3/4 is here, if I want to know what 1/3 of that line is, I need to make sure that this section here is broken into thirds. Remember, the denominator tells you how much you're going to break this section into. And luckily for us, it's already broken into 3 equal sections. So if I want to show what is 1/3 of 3/4, I'm going to color in 1/3 of 3/4. Now, that does not mean that the value of this is 1/3. It just means that it's 1/3 of 3/4. So now, or this is what is 1/3 times 3/4. So now, we don't need to solve it. We don't even need to know what the answer is. We're simply looking at the red line here and the blue line here. Is 1/3 times 3/4 less than, greater than, or equal to 3/4? So if this is 3/4, is this value here, this amount here, less than, greater than, or equal to 3/4? That's right, it is less than. So all you have to do is write the words less than on the line. Now let's go to number 2. Number 2 says, use the number line below to show 5/3 times 3/4. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find 3/4 on the number line. So we have a number line going from 0 to 2, and then 1 at the halfway point. Each whole is broken into 1, 2, 3, 4 equal sections. So 3/4 is at the same place it was on the top 2 number lines. It is at this mark here. That is 3/4. Now we want to show 5/3 of 3/4. So if we remember that the denominator of the other factor tells us how much we're going to break 3/4 into, we know that we need to break it into thirds. And the good news is it's already broken into thirds. Now, for the sake of being able to compare the two lengths, I'm going to highlight under the line to show us what 3/4 looks like. And then I'm going to highlight above the line to show us what 5/3 looks like. So right now, this is broken into these sections are each 1/3 of 3/4. So it's already equally broken up into 1/3 of 3/4. So each of these sections is 1/3 of 3/4. But we need to highlight 5 of those. So there's 1, there's 2, there's 3. I'm going to need 2 more equal parts. So I'm going to add 1 more equal part and 1 more equal part. So the blue line shows us 5/3 of 3/4. So when we look at that blue line, which shows us 5/3 of 3/4, or 5/3 times 3/4, is it less than, greater than, or equal to 3/4? So 3/4 is pink, 5/3 times 3/4 is blue. Is it less than, greater than, or equal to 3/4? That's right, it's greater than. And finally, we're going to do on this page, do number 3. So number 3 says use the number line below to show 3/3 times 3/4. So, like as we've done in the past, we need to find 3/4. So we all know, just because we've done it so many times, we know where 3/4 is. Then we're going to look at the denominator of the other factor, and we're going to break this factor into thirds. So as I did before, I'm going to highlight what 3/4 looks like on the bottom line. Then I'm breaking the 3/4 into thirds, and I want to highlight 3 of those thirds. So I'm going to highlight 1/3 of 3/4, 2/3 of 3/4, and 3/3 of 3/4. Now, when I compare the blue and the pink line, is 3/3 times 3/4 less than, greater than, or equal to 3/4? That's right, it's equal to. So as you can see, there's kind of a pattern that's gone on. If we look at this factor here, see if that focuses. There we go. This factor here, when we multiply 3/4 times a factor less than 1, we get a resulting amount less than 3/4. When we multiply 3/4 times a factor greater than 1, we get a resulting amount that, or product, that is greater than 3/4. And when we multiply 3/4 by a factor that's equal to 1, we get a product that is equal to 3/4. This is very similar to the model, the table we saw yesterday. It's just showing it what it would look like on a number line. And to help this maybe make a little bit more sense, I'm going to highlight this in pink so that you can see that 3/4 is always the pink, and then the changing value is the blue. All right, let's go ahead and go to page number 4, excuse me. Go to number 4. So on number 4, now it says shade the area model to show 1/3 times 3/4. So this is something that we know how to do. We've done this before. So we remember that when we have the factor that's on the top, the 4 tells us how many equal columns we have, or how many equal parts we have in this rectangle area model. The 3 tells us how many of these columns we're going to shade in. So we're going to go ahead and shade in 3 of these columns. Then we're going to multiply 3/4 times 1/3. First of all, we need to make our rows. So the denominator tells us how many equal rows we need. So we're going to need 3 rows because the denominator is 3. And then the 1 tells us how many of those rows we're going to shade in. We're going to shade in 1 of them. And then the resulting product is the numerator is the overlap between the two factors. And the denominator is how many parts we have all together. So not that it matters, but the answer for this of what is 1/3 times 3/4, it would equal 3/12. But the good news is, or not that it's bad news, but is that that's not what we're looking for. What we want to know is 1/3 times 3/4. Is it less than, greater than, or equal to 3/4? If we compare this orange section just to the yellow section, is the orange section less than, greater than, or equal to this yellow section? It's less than. The orange section covers 1, 2, 3 tiles, but the yellow section covers 4 tiles. Is the orange section less than, greater than, or equal to the pink section? Well, the orange section is 3. The pink is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 tiles. So therefore, we know that 1/3 times 3/4 is less than 3/4. All right. And if you look at the 3/4 section here, 3/4 is all the pink, and the orange is definitely smaller than the pink. So now let's think about it. So it says here, in problem 1, you multiplied 1/3 times 3/4 on a number line. So if you go back, I don't even know if you realize that, but we multiplied here, what is 1/3 times 3/4? And we could see that when we had 3/4, when we multiplied it by 1/3, we got a resulting product that was less than 3/4. When we did the area model, we found out what 1/3 of 3/4 was, and we got a resulting product that is less than 3/4. So you modeled 1/3 times 3/4 on a number line, and in problem 4, you used an area model to show the same product. Do both models show the same comparison between 1/3 times 3/4 and 3/4? Explain. So both models show that 1/3 times 3/4 will result in or has a product less than 3/4. No matter how you do the problem, you will get, in this case, with this equation, you will always get a product less than 3/4. Why? Because we're multiplying by a factor of less than 1. So since we're multiplying by a factor less than 1, we will get a product that is less than the other factor. Let's go to number 6. Number 6 says this. Choose any model you like to show how the product 3/2 times 4/3 compares to 4/3. Then complete the comparison. So I'm going to show 4/3 in pink, and I'm going to show 3/2 in yellow. I'll do the 4/3 below the line and the 3/2 above the line. 3/2 of 4/3, above the line. So the first thing I do is I look at my number line. My number line starts at 0 and goes to 2 with 1 at the halfway point. And since 3 is the denominator, each whole is broken into 3 sections. And I need to highlight 4 of those sections. So I'm going to highlight 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. So this number line is showing us 4/3, or 1 1/3. Now, I want to know what are 3/2 of 4/3. So if I look at 4/3 and I cut 4/3 in half, that line right here is half of 4/3 because I have 2 sections there's 2 sections between 4/3 and the halfway mark, and there's 2 sections between 0 and the halfway mark. So now I want to highlight how many of those halves. I want to highlight 3/2. So I know that 2 sections is equal to 1/2. And then I need 2/2, and then I'm going to need 2 more sections to do 3/2. Now, it's that 3/2 is not showing 3/2. It's showing 3/2 of 4/3. I know, that's so tricky. But this yellow line shows us 3/2 of 4/3. So when we look at 3/2 of 4/3, is it greater than, equal to, or less than 4/3? That's right, it is greater than. Now, could we have done that without a number line? Would we have known that it was going to be greater than without using the number line? Yes, we should have, because remember, this factor that we're multiplying 4/3 by is greater than 1. So since this factor here is greater than 1, we know that no matter how many different ways we show it, that the resulting product will always be a product greater than 4/3 because the other factor was greater than 1. With that, that's the end of this lesson. You're going to go on and do pages 431 and 432 on your own, and then you will be finished. As always, if you have any questions, just give your teacher an email or raise your hand if you're in class.